The war against male headship is an assault on the God of the Bible.
All right, let's see it.
The woman is made after the man, male headship.
So this claim only works if we agree to arbitrarily prioritize one set of biblical texts over and directly against another set that we are going to arbitrarily subordinate. See, there are two creation accounts in the book of Genesis, and in one, man and woman are created simultaneously together. There is no distinction. In the other, the man is created first and the woman is created second. So this creator is saying, we're going to focus on this one. We're going to totally ignore the other one. And that's problematic. Now, in Genesis 2:4b, the second half of the verse, all the way to the end of Genesis chapter 3, we have a creation account that involves an anthropomorphic material deity who is creating by manipulating the materials that are on earth and who works through trial and error and has to correct and update their creation. That is the earlier creation account, probably created in the 7th century or something like that. Genesis 1:1 through Genesis 2:4a is the later creation account, the priestly creation account that was composed precisely to update, to correct, to supplant the earlier creation account. And it probably dates to around the year 500 BCE or somewhere around there. And that is a universalized deity who creates by divine fiat and who immediately pronounces their creation good. There is no need to try to search for solutions to problems that have arisen in the course of creation. So, if we are taking the biblical authors as authorities, then which of these two ought to take priority? It can't be both. There's no way to reconcile these two accounts plausibly. To do so means to create an entirely new conceptualization of creation that did not exist anywhere near the time periods in which these two authors wrote. And so what this creator is doing is saying, I have a rhetorical priority, and that's to subordinate the authority of women to that of men. So I'm going to arbitrarily decide, this one takes priority, the one that has men created first. And in addition to being a completely arbitrary deployment of the Bible in service of one's structuring of power and values, it actually rejects the authority of the biblical authors who came through later and said, we need to update and correct this and have humanity created simultaneously. This creator is saying, I'll be the one to decide which biblical texts have authority and which do not.
The woman is made for the man, male headship. The woman is named by the man, male headship.
So we're still arbitrarily prioritizing one creation account over and directly against its replacement. But there's something else going on here too. Neither of these observations actually leads necessarily to the conclusion that male headship is part of God's created order. But there is a text in Genesis 2:4b through the end of Genesis 3 that does explicitly state male headship. And that's Genesis 3:16, which this creator studiously ignores. And that's because that is where God pronounces a punishment on the woman, saying that because of what she has done, her desire will be for her husband, but he would rule over her. And it's likely that this creator is glossing over this and not mentioning the only explicit declaration of male headship in this whole story, because it's not a part of the created order. It's a part of the fallen order. This is a product of the fall. This is not the way God intended things to be, at least within the Christian renegotiation of this narrative and the concept of the fall. So this creator is not wanting to engage that because it gets a little sticky to try to say, oh yeah, that thing that was explicitly named as part of the fallen world, that's actually also part of God's intended created order, but it's secret.
And if that's not enough, the Bible doesn't say sin came into the world through one couple. It says sin came into the world through one man. Why? Male headship.
Is it really male headship? Because it's misreading Genesis 3. Whatever's going on in Romans 5 is not what is stated in Genesis 3. Genesis 3 is pretty clearly trying to offload responsibility for the fall onto the agency of the woman. It is her agency that is the proximate cause of everything. The story has the serpent approaching Eve. Eve makes the decision after considering it to eat the fruit. Eve then gives some of the fruit to her husband, who was with her, and he ate. So we're glossing rather quickly over the agency of Adam. And then when God confronts Adam, says, did you eat that fruit I told you not to eat? Adam says, she gave it to me. And so God then confronts Eve and says, what did you do? And then Eve tries to offload responsibility onto the serpent. And so the curses go serpent, Eve, Adam. So while Adam is very clearly the focus of this ideological tale, this narrative, this portion about eating the fruit is trying to offload responsibility onto Eve. So if we're reversing that and saying through one man sin entered the world, we are either reading some other story that has not been preserved in the Bible, or if we have to read this all univocally, we're suggesting that Eve is not the owner of her own agency, that her husband takes over all of her agency, her autonomy, her personhood, that whatever she does ultimately is his responsibility, is his possession. And that's not just male headship, that's just straight up misogyny.
Yes, you say that, but isn't that why we've had all these atrocities against women, because of this grotesque, archaic idea? No, it's not. Then the man said, this is at last bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh. She should be called Isha, woman, because she was taken out of Ish, man. This is an idea of complete equality.
So in my video number 1076, I pointed out that any renegotiation of the Bible that seeks to assert the equality of men and women cannot do so by denying the presence of inequality and inequity in the Bible, because to do so ultimately creates a conceptualization of equality that incorporates inequity and inequality, and that is precisely what this creator is doing, suggesting that the Bible insists on their full equality, but still says men get to be in charge.
She's me. She's the same thing that I am. She came from me. Women in the Christian world, where the Bible has taken root and shaped the culture, are the freest, most prosperous, most protected women on the face of the earth.
So this is an empirically false claim that is a part of a blithe and absolutely laughable attempt to rationalize away misogyny and patriarchy. It is an attempt to convince women that their freedom and their equality is most fully realized in their subordination to men. And it is attempting to convince them that if they cannot accept that, they are rejecting God.